Hi, this is Father Louis SCURTI here at Long Branch, New Jersey, with Heather Finn, my guest. This is going to be an interesting few segments. We're dealing with a variety of very sensitive topics: human trafficking, care, drugs, sex, violence, and all from the perspective of what's going on in our world today. Heather, thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Skirty.
I've known Heather for many years, and finally got her here because she's really from Arizona to share her knowledge with you. But I'm going to start where you first started with your charity. What's the name of the charity and why? Why did it start?
So, Handing Out Hope was born during COVID. As much as COVID was painful for many, it was inspirational to me because I was able to take my pain from first losing my godfather and then losing my friend to fentanyl and knowing what was happening in Arizona, and I needed to do something.
Mm.
So, Handing Out Hope was created.
Why fentanyl? I'm going to interrupt for
No
the
worries.
obvious, but I want my audience to
Well,
know.
because we live so close to the border, and being at the border and being in that environment, you would. I was educated on what was really happening at the border. Okay, so we have pills coming over. What are those pills? I would go to Mexico and I would buy my lupus medicine there. I would buy my thyroid medicine there. Like you can buy medication in Mexico, but now you're buying Adderall or Xanax or what you think is oxys, and it's 100% or minimal fentanyl, and not actually what you think you're buying.
Mm.
So when that happened, that really just took me to a whole nother place. I had to do something because if I didn't during the pandemic, what else am I going to do? I have to go feed homeless people, or I have to go help people, or find a place where I could pour my anger because it was anger,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And be able to do stuff for other people to educate them first and to show them what was really happening because it was happening so rapidly.
Mm, mm.
And I say rapidly, meaning that when I went out into the streets of Phoenix, because I had to do something, I didn't know what to do with myself, and it was COVID. So, you couldn't travel, you couldn't go anyplace. And we were kind of lax still in Arizona. So I just started making lunches and going out on the streets and like really like finding out what was happening out there and why what was happening at our border was happening in our state. And I can only worry about my state at the moment. So I went out on the streets and I just started feeding the homeless and
Mm.
talking to people like, why are you here? Well, it was better for me to come from Washington to here during COVID because it's freer here and blah, blah, blah. But you're living on the streets, like you have this. And oh, well, I'm not doing drugs. I'm only doing M30s. And then me going, what's M30s?
Yeah.
Like now I have to re educate myself
Right.
on,
Interesting.
like, all I
Yeah.
know is weed, coke, crack, you know, the normal, not normal, but normal addictions around the country. I don't know what fentanyl is. I don't know what M30s are. Like, where is this coming from? And just starting to talk to people downtown and like going there every Tuesday, every Thursday, getting to know them, getting to know why they're there, who was
And they were the
pregnant,
same people every week.
same people, same people. And it was so interesting to me because here I am feeding these people every week, twice a week, like really getting to know them. Like the one gal was pregnant, and I would bring her down vitamins and I'd bring her down different things. I knew she was doing funky stuff, but it didn't matter to me. I felt like if I gave her that, maybe she would like latch onto it. She
Like,
would want to be
yeah,
better,
yeah.
whatever. But you get to know these people and you understand like this is a whole nother world. And here's this beautiful building that's Central Arizona Special Services, and these people are living on the street outside of the building. So Central Arizona Special Services, what are they giving you? So I started meeting people, befriending them and whatnot. This one gentleman, Jeff, he was, I'm going to say 62 when I met him. He said to me, he was an alcoholic, never a drug addict. He was an alcoholic, and he was just he found himself in dire needs, right? So he was living at the Central Arizona Special Services, and he said to me,
Oh, he could live there?
"You can live there." He said, "I would rather live on the street, Heather." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And I met him in Avondale, which is near my house. It's about 30 minutes away from the city. And I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "People here are nicer. When I panhandle, they'll give me more money. They'll take care of me." He puts his bike on the bus. He goes back downtown. He lives there. And I said, "Well, what goes on in there?" And he said, "You don't want to live there." So then it just sparked me to say, well, what other places don't you want to live? Like, what other places are helping, but are they really helping?
Right.
Because that becomes a problem. So you have this huge homeless drug border. We're starting to see migrants in our area. Like, we're only 2 hours away from the border, where, and where I live, 30 minutes away from the city, so that most of the migrants would get dropped off in the city. They get dropped off in Mesa, Tucson, which is further down. But I started seeing like families like at exits. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, I needed to learn so much. Like, I felt like, where are we living?
And they weren't being helped by social
No,
services?
no, no. There's no social, nobody's helping you. What they did in Arizona is they took, during the pandemic, they took everybody off the street and they put them in the zone. And that was by the Central Arizona Special Services. It was called the zone. And they put all these people down there, and there had to be thousands of them. And I saw the community growing and growing. And I would go down, like I said, twice a week, feed them a couple hundred sandwiches every week. And toiletries and moon bags. We would do moon bags for the women so that they had sanitary products and stuff like that. We started to find out that people eat cat food, and like you give out dog treats because there's dogs everywhere, because people would just drop their dogs down by the homeless people, and the homeless people love dogs because that makes them a companion, right? But they were becoming the dog at the end of the day. I felt like they were like the straggler in the street. Like, the dogs were being treated better because people would be more willing to give to an animal sometimes than a human. And that like was like to my heart, right? Again, kept doing it. And then I started finding that people were being trafficked. And I really didn't know what that meant. We always thought, like, going back to the 70s, 80s in New York City, you see this crazy era, what's happening, drugs, and there's prostitution, and so you just think prostitution. That's such a terrible word when I really learned what trafficking is, because people want to be prostitutes, okay, but most of them don't. So there's that comes into play. So I'm like, why are they out here? Why are they? So I would talk to this one gal, Marguerite. She was on a bicycle. She was a big, huge bicycle. And she'd be like, I'm good, Heather. I'm good. I'm only doing M30s. I'm like, M30s are fentanyl. Because now I'm copping on. Like, I'm learning what they are. And she's like, no. She's like, I said, honey, you should not be doing that. And she was such a beautiful, beautiful gal. She was from Vegas. And I would just be like, okay, I need to learn more. So I went to the computer. Like, where else do you go? It's COVID. I've already gone to the streets. I don't really know where else to go. Like, how do I find out facilities that are in the area or programs that are in the area to help people? So, because if I want to do something more, I need to have resources, right? So I sat down and I Googled and whatever, and I found Operation Underground Railroad. Okay, Operation Underground. Let me look. And it was a human trafficking rescue. And I just took every webinar they had. I watched every webinar. I watched every training program, or they did training programs. I watched everything, and it was COVID. So they had this go visit this facility in Phoenix and go meet human trafficking survivors. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll go pack my car with a bunch of supplies to go off. And I met my first human trafficking survivor, speak. I was blown away. I was with a bunch of women that were all volunteers from Operation Underground Railroad, organized people to come there to help the facility in Phoenix. It wasn't an Operation Underground Railroad facility, they were just helping the facilities in different areas that they would vet for their survivors. I'm sorry, rescues more, and then hopefully be a survivor. So went there and had an amazing, eye-opening, like, wow, what else can I do? And that was it. I was done. I was like, I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to.
Give me the story of any one of those women. I presume they're all women.
Mostly women, but men are trafficked as well. I
Maybe the audience should know what trafficking is.
Okay, so there are lots of different ways to be trafficked. First of all, it's always about force, fraud, and coercion. So there's three ways you're trafficked. Force, you're forced, right? Obviously. So you are, your father traffics you because he wants a new car. There's many different reasons. I know that sounds crazy, but there are many different reasons. So force, fraud. Fraud is, I come from South America. I think I'm coming to work at a restaurant in Arizona. I get here. Here's my documentation. All the documents get taken from me, and I have to work. That's fraud. Coercion is tricking you into it, grooming you, um, whether it's a friend's father that says, oh, you'd be a beautiful model. Let me take you to my friend's studio. Next thing you know, you're getting pictures taken, but they're being put on the internet. So there's many ways, but there's also many different trafficking, ways to be trafficked, right? So you have sex trafficking. Everybody just, as soon as you say trafficking, they think it's sex. Okay, yes, that is a huge part of the equation. But there is drugs, there's guns, there's contraband, there's organs, there is domestic help. So a lot of Middle Easterns will traffic their wives and or, well, mostly their daughters, or multiple wives if they really need it, but mostly their daughters for domestic. So they'll sell their daughter to be a wife, to be a servant, a slave. And all this falls under modern day slavery at the end of the day. Like, we are watching modern day slavery. We can pretend that it's not happening, but every single city right now in this town, it's happening. Somebody's being trafficked for something. You can think it's not happening in, Waldwick. It's happening. Something is always happening. Scottsdale, Arizona. A lot of times, Scottsdale, Arizona, they will have human traffickers that will go onto the streets and pick up women that are homeless. And they say, come on, I'm going to teach you how to not be homeless, and you're going to come and I'm going to help you. And they put these women in these houses in Scottsdale. And there's a huge thing that's going on in Scottsdale right now. Like, you can't have a certain amount of people in the house anymore because these types of things were happening where it was like a brothel, for lack of a better word, within Scottsdale, Arizona. Like, it happens everywhere. So with that being said, like, human trafficking, so like, okay, so with that being said, like, when I'm downtown and I'm with homeless people and I'm like observing, There's somebody driving through, either picking them up, taking them away, bringing them back, or you have a bicycle coming through with a backpack with drugs, selling the drugs to the homeless, keep them sick, keep them on the streets, keep them going. Okay. It's all part of our government. It's all part of what, I mean, everybody knows the cops drive around the city. It's right there. The Capitol building's up the road. They drive right past it. Why am I seeing it? Why isn't anybody else seeing it? Right. So trafficking is a little bit of everything. And I don't think people understand the fact that it's not just sex. When you go in a restaurant and you see, and I'll use Manhattan as an example, you see these young kids hustling. Everybody's like, "Oh, he's such a good worker." No, he's there because he's paying off a cartel member. Period. End story. He's not there because he's loving to work in a restaurant in Manhattan, 12 hours at shift, and then go off to freaking clean the McDonald's bathrooms. Like, labor trafficking is huge that people don't even understand that aspect of it. Like sex, labor, um, the uh, the manufacturing, like that falls under labor. You have meat packing plants, you have milk plants, you have dairy plants, you have farmers that don't even know, some of them don't even know that they're literally buying children to come work on their farms. But then, like, let's go back to, not to make this political, but like, let's go back to like Nancy Pelosi saying, well, we need all these migrants to come so they can pick grapes in San Francisco or Napa Valley. Like, you're promoting child labor. Like, you're not allowed to say that out loud and not be asked why is that allowed? That's child labor. Like, you just say those things out loud. But we do. Political people and people in the industry, they say it out loud like, oh, it's just, well, she's 13. Well, no, she's 13. She shouldn't have to do XYZ because she's 13. Like, there's a lot of that kind of things that like bother me. But anyway,
Okay,
go ahead.
we're going to
Let's
stop
get back.
there for a pause. I told you it's going to be an interesting series of episodes. We're going to come back. We're picking up with child trafficking and many other aspects of the work that Heather has gotten into and the good deeds that have been born from her work. But there's a lot more to do. And the more we know about all these topics, the better, in order to ameliorate the situation throughout the country. Thank you, Heather. That's quite a send off. We're going to pick it up next show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is Father Louis SCURTI with Heather Finn here dealing with all aspects of human trafficking.